Welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. And today I am honored and excited to bring to you the one and only Jay Croft. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Chris. How are you?
I'm great. I was having some tea leading up to this. I heard that you were also having some tea. So, we're all ready to go to have a good conversation.
Yes.
Um, and one of the things I'm going to just dive right into, because what I find with podcasts is the first 5 minutes is like the most powerful 5 minutes.
Okay.
So something that you and I have talked about is how you are launching your book.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to bring it up because of just how much of an impact that it can have on a person's career, on their point
hmm
of view, on their perspective. So I'd love for you first to tell me a little bit more about the book and what inspired you to write it and what it's all about.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited about this conversation. I've enjoyed getting to know you recently and enjoy your show and coming at things from a little different angle. So I hope I know we're going to have a good conversation today. My book is called Selling Longevity, and then it has a lengthy subtitle, which is all about how fitness over 50 is important not only for individuals, but it can be important, crucial, in fact, for gyms and other fitness and health and wellness studios or businesses because the industry typically, as you know, focuses on people in their 20s and 30s, which is fine. I got nothing against people in their 20s and 30s, but it's a saturated market. And so I think the smart gym owner these days is looking for markets that are underserved, that are full of people who have the time and the money to spend on their fitness and their health and the real motivation that comes later in life that's a little more profound and lasting than wanting to be, I don't know, hot when you're young. And again, I'm not putting anyone down. I wanted to be hot when I was young too, but now there's more interesting things that compel people to come and pay their money for a gym or a trainer. So the book, Selling Longevity, is designed to do two things, I guess, primarily. It's to lay out the case that about why gyms need to be focusing on people over 50. And I say over 50, you can say over 45, you can say over 60, doesn't really matter. We're talking about that kind of at or near retirement, at or near menopause, at or near being grandparents, entering a new phase of life and phasing out of being in that coveted market of 18 to 49, at least in the US, they call it as being 18 to 49, where that's where all the marketing is directed at. And then after that, your money is less interesting to a lot of people. I think it's more interesting for gym owners. So part of the book is to make the case why you should be doing that. And then the other purpose is to show you how, to sort of illustrate to you how you can, you know, reach out to people who are a little bit older and have slightly different motivations for getting fit or staying fit and do it better, do a good job at it, make more money for your business and help more people. So
Absolutely.
that's the point of selling longevity.
That's amazing. And something that a lot of people might miss or take for granted is how important it is to serve that demographic and all demographics in a way that enhances like connection and
Yeah.
helps with like the social pillar of life because we have to take care of our physical health, our mental health, but we also need to have like support systems in life.
Mhm.
And what I've witnessed, not only in like the people that I've worked with as clients, but also just in the reception of different pieces of content that I put out, having really strong social connections can really help people with staying healthy when they feel like somebody
Absolutely.
always has their back. And
Mhm.
so if people are thinking like, how can I stay strong in the fitness industry? Think about how you could be that person that provides not only guidance and instruction, but also that strong social connection. And there was one thing that I wanted to dive into in our discussion, and it's a quick shift, a quick pivot,
Yeah.
basically talking about one of your career pivots that you made.
Okay.
Because previously, like you weren't always doing what you do currently. So, what was life like in like your 30s and 40s?
Very different. And I think you can split my career in half, maybe not in half, that implies two equal parts. You can split it somewhere, roughly half, between before the internet and after the internet because I was a newspaper journalist earlier. That was all I wanted to be. That's what I went to college to become. That's what I spent my 20s and 30s and getting into my 40s doing and loving and thriving in it. I had an exciting, rewarding, successful career in daily newspapers. I worked at newspapers across the country, literally from Alaska down to South Florida, and then I ended up here in Atlanta in late '96 as a reporter. And so I was working, chugging along on my career when the internet came along and smartphones came along and pretty much destroyed the newspaper industry as we knew it then. Now people always say, "Oh, we still have newspapers. I still like to look at a newspaper." And it's like, "Well, that's cute, but that's not what we're talking about. That's not the industry that I wanted to be a part of and that I was a part of and assumed blithely that like everyone did that it would always be there for me." And so when that happened, it was, I don't know, 2006, 7, 8, something like that. I decided to leave the industry, but it wasn't because I was mad at newspapers or I didn't want to do it anymore. It was that I saw that it was disappearing. And within a year after I left, hundreds of my colleagues were laid off, not only at my former newspaper, but at just about every major daily newspaper in the country. And so I got out a little bit ahead of when I would have been asked to leave anyway. And so that was sort of the end of my first career. But I loved being a newspaper reporter because it forced me to get out into the world and talk to new people and learn new things and tell stories involving complex yet emotional information to a mass audience every day so that they would be engaged in our product and do with that information what they needed to do, whatever that might be. Maybe they're just entertained by it. Maybe they're just informed and better citizens. Maybe they get angry at the government. Maybe whatever. So after that ended, I kind of stumbled into corporate America, corporate communications jobs at several very large multi-billion dollar global corporations here in Atlanta, doing internal communications for their many thousands of employees, a little bit of like employee benefits and stuff like that. And long story short, it took me a few years to realize that I did not like that. I was not good at that. I did not fit in there. I don't know if you've ever had a job at a giant corporation, but I found it to be just really boring as hell, and just the whole swimming with sharks corporate gamesmanship. I just didn't have any interest in it, didn't want to learn how to play the game, and didn't do well in it. So right around the time I turned 50, I was realizing that corporate America was not going to sustain me and I needed to find a new way to make a living. And I was looking around for things that I could write about on my own. And around that time had just turned 50 and I noticed that fitness marketing was no longer targeted at me. And I'm not a trainer, I don't own a gym, but I've been going to the gym for my whole life. And so when you realize you are no longer in the desired market, it's very clear. It's hard to say exactly what made me see it, but when I saw it, I knew exactly what it was. And the best way I can put it is, this probably hasn't happened to you yet because you're a lot younger than I am, but it will. And anyone who's about 40 will relate to this. Perhaps you're riding in a car and you have 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds in the car with you, and they're singing along to the songs on the radio, and they know every word, just like you did when you were 12 years old, right?
Hmm.
Now, you, as the adult in the car, you don't know who these singers are. You've never heard these songs before. It sounds like noise to you. You have no idea. And that's just because you aged out of the market, that pop music is directed at kids. You're not a kid anymore, so pop music moved on without you. And that's how I felt about fitness marketing. It's not exactly apples to apples, but it's the best way I can put it so far. So I looked into it, put on my reporter cap, and did some research and found that, yeah, the fitness industry was kind of shooting itself in the foot by being obsessed with, like I said, younger people who want the same thing. They want a big gym with weights in it where they have a low entry fee and low customer service, and they just come and go as they want. And that really didn't seem to appeal to a lot of people my age and older who might need a little more customer service, might want to pay for a higher level of attention. I don't mean hand holding or babying, but by the time you're 50 or 60 or 70 years old and you have more time and money and you've been around the block a few times in life, you're willing to pay for things that you aren't willing to pay for when you're 25, and you have the money to do it. So I thought, you're missing an opportunity here. Looked into it, met some folks. Long story short, came up with this business, which I call Prime Fit Content. And I create and sell marketing materials to gyms across the country, including a few in Canada and UK, to help them reach people over 50, to distinguish themselves in their communities as being one of the few gyms that wants to work with older people, that can work with older people, and that provides a good user experience. Because a lot of gyms, if I walk into most gyms and they see my wrinkles and gray hair and see that I'm not 25, they're just clearly not interested in, it's not I can handle it. I've been going to gyms my whole life, but for a 65-year-old person who's deconditioned and hasn't been in a gym since college, to get up the nerve to walk into a gym and then be ignored by some teenager behind the counter, you know, bad business, right?
Yeah.
So it's a long rambling answer to your question, perhaps, but that's kind of how I got here. I based my new business on the internet, on social media, on email, and used my newspaper journalism skills and background to gather information, interview people, put together compelling information, and provide it to a mass audience. It's just more focused now.
Yeah. And something that I'm curious about is with regards to your work with Prime Fit content, have there been any connections from like your newspaper era or any of your other writing eras that have kind of come up for you and kind of like being sort of like you get to reunite with somebody and you're like, wow, like this is again a really good connection?
Oh, that's interesting. That is a good question. I'm gonna have to think about that for a second. Nothing's coming to mind. Most of my reporting as a journalist was in government and in criminal justice and legal issues like lawsuits and government regulation. So not a lot of overlap there with what I'm doing now. And I don't think I've met it. I don't think I've come across anyone from my previous life. It's more the mindset of viewing this as my beat. As a newspaper reporter, I had a beat, and a beat reporter does a lot of work every day in order to find out what's happening on the beat. That beat might be a courthouse or a school board or a state legislature or the presidency or whatever it is. You're doing a lot of daily digging and daily checking and paying attention to everything that's going on so that you can put together what you're going to put in the newspaper. And that's how I view over 50 fitness. It's my beat, and I'm always talking about it, reading about it, learning about it, whatever I can. Most of it doesn't end up directly in the content, but it informs my approach.
Yeah, and I mean that's a perfect answer because it's an honest answer.
Mm,
And sort of some of my inspiration for the question kind of came from my own self-reflection as I was kind of
yeah.
thinking about different points of view towards approaching fitness and who needs fitness and who needs just the different educational aspects because quite often the people who need a service the most are the people who are the most distanced from it. And then it's just a matter of positioning it and kind of the messaging around it.
Hmm.
Because, like, for example, if I could go on a walk with like a majority of the people that I know and probably teach them something about fitness or nutrition. And they wouldn't know that there was a gap between where they are and where they could be until we had a good discussion. But then they probably won't listen to me until I find something that correlates to something that's urgent for them. And so for a lot of people, it winds up being that I will talk about like how's life, and then they'll maybe like for people my age, they'd be talking about maybe their aging parents, and they'll be like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, my parents can't do this, or they're having a hard time with this, and then maybe somewhere along the line we might talk about alcohol intake, or we might talk about strength training. And the thing is that with people, with the average person in the generation where they are 50 and older right now, a lot of them aren't used to a service that provides instruction around fitness. In like the big busy cities and urban centers, yes, but rural areas, not so much. Unless they know somebody personally who's already enrolled them into this stuff.
Hmm.
Like most of my like aunts and uncles, when I tell them that I'm a personal trainer and people will contract me or pay me to help them with what to do to stay active, like I have a 90-year-old uncle who kind of chuckles because he's like, they need to be told what to do.
Yeah.
Because for his majority of his life, he was just active on the farm
Right.
and he lifted equipment and machinery and he got probably like 28,000 steps a day because he's walking across the yard, etc.
Yeah.
And as that demographic gets older, when they go to the hospital, somebody will assign them some physiotherapy or physical therapy exercises, but then it's just like there's no follow through, there's no follow up. And as a result, like there's a huge gap in communication, a huge gap in messaging because it is such a massive demographic and it's a lot of
Hmm.
people where the problem is very urgent, but then they don't consider themselves part of that base because there's something that just hasn't clicked. Like
Yeah.
maybe they might seek out to speak to a professional on like chiropractic or like specific physiotherapy exercises, but they won't think about the necessity of the follow through. And then even just with like people that I've talked to about just aging and the process of getting older and how it can be very isolating, that's like another lens to which like a coach can kind of weave themselves into that.
Hmm.
But the reason why I bring this all up is because like when I think back to past life, there's always a bridge. I can always connect things because like I've worked in a warehouse that supplied like stainless steel products, and I was able to provide complimentary consultations to some of those guys because they could see that their quality of life was hindered, even
Hmm.
though they weren't quite into fitness as I was. I've seen some instances where it was just simply a matter of helping people get more clear on like their protein requirements, nutrition quality and stuff like that. And so I always like to kind of like go back in time and kind of reflect on all the people that you've met along the way and kind of think like who has now gone full circle where now because of their lifestyle, because of the things that they need, because of where they're at in life, because of their concerns, who needs what I do now? Where it wouldn't have been on their radar back then, but now because of life circumstances, who needs it now? And I think
Hmm.
that's where not only your service can be helpful, but also like your book can be helpful for people to really like reassess their life experiences to this point. Because like I'm 33, so I have a lot of life experiences to have yet, but at the same time, I have a few decades of work experience and
Sure.
connections and stuff like that. But to kind of bring us back on to our next question is the biggest lie people believe about changing careers in midlife.
Oh boy. Well, first of all, before I get into anything like that, I'm reluctant to give advice too much because everything is so different, and I didn't choose this in particular. I chose this. Well, let me say I did choose it, but I chose it because of some things that happened. The internet came along and smartphones came along and destroyed my industry. That happened to me. It also happened to, everybody. It's not like it was to me only or to me personally, but I would have stayed at newspapers, I'm sure. I don't think I would have left because I enjoyed that and that was my identity and that was really the only thing I knew how to do and the only thing I ever wanted to do. So to be in your 40s and suddenly see your entire industry vanish, you have to scramble. And I scrambled, and the first few years in corporate America were kind of a waste. And then I kind of looked around and rooted around and stumbled around and failed a lot before I got on my feet a little bit with Prime Fit content and some other things that I've been doing. So I say all that just to say that I didn't wake up one day, today I shall change careers midlife. You can learn from my experience and my bravery. It wasn't like that.
Yeah.
But But I think the lesson for me the lesson has been that shit happens. I started out thinking I am the master of my destiny and I'll learn how to do this and I'll acquire these skills and these experiences and I'll build myself up and I'll have a shining suit of armor and go forth into the world. And good for you, young man. And then shit happens. And the key thing is, I guess, is how you respond to it. And again, I say this having responded poorly or with mistakes. I didn't like just suddenly say, "Oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do now." I was knocked on my ass when that happened, and I think my what I learned about finding success again after all of that was to go with what you want. You know, because I wanted to be a newspaper reporter and I made that happen. And then I never wanted to be in corporate America. Does anyone grow up saying, I'm going to write the employee report for giant corporation? Maybe somebody did. I never did. It just happened and I needed to pay the bills and it paid extremely well, so I did it. But when I left that line of work, it was because I hated every single second of it and I was miserable. So the money didn't matter anymore. I also want to say I wasn't good at it, which is probably a real part of it. I just didn't fit it in a giant corporation. So there's that. But when I decided to make a big shift and leave corporate and strike out on my own, I said, what do I like? What do I care about anyway? I didn't care about those companies that I was working at. What do I care about? And I made a list of three things that I cared about. And those three things I remember very clearly were fitness and the news and movie and TV production. So it just so happens that friends of mine from the newspaper ended up at CNN, which previously was based here in Atlanta and still has a presence. So I called one of them up and I said, "Hey, can I come work for you a couple days a week to pay the bills while I decide what I'm going to do?" And so I went to work at CNN part time. And the other thing was the movie and TV production. Hollywood had basically moved to Atlanta. Most of the, I don't know about most, a great many movies and TV shows that you've seen in the last 10 or 15 years were produced here in Atlanta for various reasons regarding tax incentives that the state gave the production companies. And so a friend of mine who left the paper and started her own PR company was doing a lot of work for the studios. So I called her up and said, "What am I going to do?" And she said, "Work for me. It's not a full-time job, but it's a little bit." So I said, "Great, I'll do that." And then the other thing was fitness. And so I created Prime Fit content thinking, okay, that's three buckets of income. I'll have CNN because I know what I'm doing in the news environment. And I'll have the movie and TV studios because this friend of mine was creative and smart enough to start her own agency, and then I'll have my own business bringing in revenue. And between those three income sources, I'll be fine. And that's pretty much what happened. Except I grew to love the Prime Fit content so much that the other things eventually kind of fell away as they will do. And now the fitness component of my work is really all I'm doing, and I love it. And I guess the main thing is to choose something that compels you, and maybe you don't have to love it like I love those three topics. Maybe you're driven by money. Maybe you have tremendous financial need in midlife and you need to make a ton of money right away, then find a way to do that. I don't know. I'm not saying go have fun rah rah all the time. It's not that silly. But for me the thing was to stop worrying about the money and do what interested me and what I liked. And out of that came a lot of good things.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense and resonates with me because my career journey has had some similarities where it's like I didn't necessarily like wake up and decide that I was going to do specific things. It just
Yeah.
kind of evolved in that direction and not everything went as planned and not
Yeah.
everything actually succeeded. I've had a lot of failures and a lot of things that
Yep.
didn't go as planned, but I really like how you emphasize if you're going to aim for something that you enjoy because by enjoying that thing, it gives you a bit more resilience to be able to bounce back when needed.
Yeah.
and to be able to kind of like stay the course, trust the process, get creative, innovate where you need to, collaborate with people wherever you have to. And I think that's an important thing. And also just paying tribute to the fact that sometimes people will just do a job that covers their essential costs, which may be
Yeah.
very steep. And that's just what life is, and that's what they do. And I
Yeah.
respect that and support it. Because a lot of people probably think I'm all about the side hustles or all about the self employment or the entrepreneurship, but I also see and understand when somebody needs to do that corporate job or they need to
Yeah.
do that essential career, etc. One of the things that I was curious about, because you talked about when we were preparing for this episode, you talked about money scarcity. And
Yeah.
I think that can be a big challenge for just about anybody. But when you have that and you're working in this space where you're a business owner, you're having to find your own leads, all that stuff, like
Hmm.
what's the thought process that you go through on a daily basis to kind of like stay at your best despite that element of life?
Okay, good question. Well, I got to tell you, it's evolved some. I've been doing this on my own since 2008. Since 2018, is that right? Has it been that long? I guess it has. It took a while to evolve to where I really got going, but my last job where I went to an office every day ended in 2018. So interesting. Well, initially I was very fortunate. Like I said, I didn't come up with I'm going to do this fitness content thing. I came up with I've got three buckets of income, which is a different mindset. I thought, how can I make a living? These between these three things, I'll be fine. And so I was very fortunate that I had CNN and my friend with the movie studio connection to make sure that my mortgage was paid and I wasn't going to go hungry while I got my fitness content up and running. So that was crucial. And then on the entrepreneurial side of it, you probably know this. Probably everyone who's ever done it knows this. It's like a roller coaster, isn't it? You make a sale, you get a little progress, you get a new client, things are going well. Oh, this is great. This is what I was meant to do. I'm a natural at this stuff. And then you lose three clients in 1 week and you think, "Oh, damn it, I'm a fraud. I'm a phony. I got to get back and get a real office job and who was I kidding? I'm never going to be able to do this." So that lasted for I don't know, a while, a couple of years maybe. And then I think it was after the pandemic maybe. I did pretty well in the pandemic, which I hate to I'm not trying to put a nice picture on the pandemic. It was awful, but I was able to help a lot of gym owners who were struggling and a lot of gym owners who were incredibly smart and creative in how they adjusted to the pandemic and serving their older clientele. So through that, I realized, hey, I've been doing this now for 3 or 4 years and I'm doing fine and I'm making a good living and everything's okay. Hmm. Hmm. So I can still freak out and stay up and worry at night if I choose to because there's not going to be enough. This is going to fall apart or I'm never going to make this work. But you know, the bills get paid and I've got some savings and I go on vacations and things are fine. You know what I mean? That track record is really solid and has been now for several years. So I try to rely on that. And then I also try to rely on this philosophy of looking at how far I've come instead of how far I have to go. There's a really helpful book that one of my major clients turned me on to. It's called The Gap and the Gain, and it's about that we're always looking ahead. Oh, if I can just get up there, if I can just reach that new goal, get that many clients, make that much money, get that promotion, get that love interest, partner interest, whatever, then I'll be happy. If I can reach my goal weight, if I can bench press this much weight, if I can run a 5 minute mile, pick it. We're always looking ahead, and because we're always looking ahead, it's the horizon is far away, and even as you get closer to as you move forward, the horizon remains the same distance, and so it's by nature, by definition, constantly frustrating, and so we feel like a failure. But if instead we turn around and we look back to where we came from and we see the gain that we have made rather than the gap that will always be there because that's just the nature of time and space and how things move, right? then we can see that we've come somewhere. And so I will do that 2 or 3 times a year. I'll look back at where I've come, where I was before, and I'll say, "Oh gosh, I'm making X number of dollars more per month than I was last time I looked," or I've got X fewer clients. It's not always good. Maybe I've lost a few and I need to tweak something. So I try to look at not how well things are going or how to put a happy face on things, but to look at the facts. And the facts, thankfully, have been pretty much in my favor. And then I can use that to get off the roller coaster. All those emotions of up and down and up and down and oh, I'm a failure. Oh, this is going to be fine now. Because that's just the nature of this. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. But the main thing for money scarcity for me is much deeper than that. And this might be getting too personal or too deep and real for you. And if it is, I apologize and we don't have to talk about it. But I have to I encourage people to think about these kinds of things if they haven't in the past. It goes back to the way I was raised, to my childhood. It has nothing really to do with me or what I'm doing for a living right now, or how much money I have in the bank account or how many clients I have. My father was a chronic gambler in the way that you might think of an alcoholic who drinks away all the money and goes and disappears for days at a time and ruins the family and causes havoc like you can't imagine, right? That's a more common, I think, in our awareness, common idea of it. So my father gambled like that throughout my childhood. And so when he won, everything was great. We were good. We got whatever we wanted, and my parents were happy, and we had vacations and stuff like that. And then when he lost, it was dark, 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 terror, horrible. And you don't understand that when you're a child, but it implants in your brain and in your psyche that nothing is reliable, that good things will end, that it's all out of your control, and it's a compulsive thing. It's not something that you do methodically, and that money has more to do with the thrill of acquiring it and the tragedy of losing it than it does with making a living and providing for yourself. So I've had to do a lot of work on that to get away from that kind of feast or famine, psychologically twisted view of money. And it's still hard. It's really hard sometimes because it's in me. I can't, I probably won't ever overcome it completely, but I'm aware of it at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for people to reflect on the different influences that may have played a role in their upbringing or in past moments in their life. Like for me, my parents had different mindsets. My mom would be very conscious about like what happens if this goes wrong,
Hmm.
and my dad would be more conscious about what happens if this goes right. And so the two different mindsets would kind of clash sometimes. And it just turned out because they showed up every day, day in, day out, things went right because they never quit. And that I talk to them regularly about how that is very formative for me to be able to be
Hmm.
successful as a self-employed person and to be able to have resilience and patience and courage to do scary things.
Yeah.
And when people are lacking that, then addressing that can be very, very helpful. Just as you have, where you're able to kind of like you're a work in progress, you're evolving and you're changing the way that you see money and you're changing the way that you see different obstacles and different adversity that may come up in your life. One of the things that I found has helped me a great deal in any of my shifts in career and stuff like that is leaning into fitness. And I know that that's something that you do regularly and you do it well. What are the ways that you stay motivated when you just don't feel like getting out of the house, when you don't want to go to the gym?
Well, motivation comes and goes, as we all know. Yeah, doesn't it? So I try not to rely on motivation. I have been doing this long enough that a lot of it's just habit and lifestyle. It's part of what I do all the time. So that's part of it. And also if I don't do it, if I don't exercise after maybe 2, definitely 3 days, I feel terrible. I carry all my physical tension in my back and shoulders. I'm not sleeping well. I'm ornery. and I think, oh, what's wrong with me? Oh, I need to go to the gym. I need to work out. And so I rely on that. And then being in this fitness industry now, I feel like I have to look the part a little bit. You know, when I was a newspaper reporter, we newspaper reporters back then were kind of, traditionally slovenly and a little messy and unkempt and, you know, didn't weren't known for their appearance. And I fell right into that. It was fine with me to have a rumpled shirt and, not shave. But if you're going to be in fitness, even like just attached to it, like I am, I think you have to present yourself in a certain way if you're going to be taken seriously.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's too based on looks, but if I'm going to advise you on how to sell fitness to people, I think I need to appear that I know what I'm talking about. That's just
Yeah.
part of it. So that's a part of the motivation. And then I think also it's getting older. I'm 61 years old and I feel fine and everything's working right and occasional minor little things here and there, but I've never had any chronic health issues or chronic pain or health scares or anything like that. And I want to maintain that. I want to continue because I'm 61 now. I was 50 about 3 weeks ago, because time just flies.
Yeah.
So I'm 61 now. I'll be 71 before you know it. And I want to maintain my life. I have a really nice lifestyle. I'm active, I'm fit, I'm healthy. I enjoy traveling, I enjoy working out, I enjoy doing whatever I want to do. And I don't want that to go away. I mean, it might go away someday if I live that long, but that's a newer motivation. So I think motivation is really more helpful if we think about it in terms of a reason or a why. Like, why do I need to do this? I really just want to sit here on the couch and channel surf. That's what I want to do. I am motivated to eat that fried chicken and take a nap.
Yeah.
But what's my why? My why is because I just gave you 3 or 4 or 5 pretty good whys that are consistent and steady for me, and they work and they get me out of the house most of the time. But most of the time, I want to. I enjoy it, and it makes me feel good. And I have friends at the gym that I enjoy seeing. I don't know their last name, but I enjoy seeing them, and we chitty chat here and there, and it's just a nice thing to do.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's important to address that motivation isn't just this magical thing that people thought hold on to it forever and it solves all their problems. Like the most accountable, the most consistent people, they don't
Yeah.
necessarily have motivation. They've embedded this lifestyle into part of their identity. Where
Yes.
it's like for me, people know me as like the founder of the Park Far Away Club. Whenever I go somewhere,
Yeah.
park far away to get more steps.
Yeah.
And I also promote long ass walks. This is something that I stole from a mentor, Kyle Dobbs, or borrowed from him, but I
Okay.
talk about it frequently, where like you go on an intentional like 2 to 3 hour walk because you can, and because you can use it for connection, and because it can help increase like your general activity without putting you into a box, without making you think that you have to be super competitive or intense or hardcore. And like there's so many things that we can draw from that. Like I'll also address what you talked about with kind of like looking the part for the industry, because people their hair can stand on edge when it comes to that. They can be like everybody should be in fitness, and I agree. I do agree. And they can be like anybody can be a trainer. Again, I agree. But then when we look at it from like a performance based metric, or when we look at it from like a sustainability based metric, there is going to be like a distinction of like two different categories of people. Like one person who may be capable of coaching and totally able to lead others might not be prioritizing a pillar of their health that could be leading them to have high blood pressure.
Yeah.
And that needs to be addressed. And they can look however they want, but they need to address that high blood pressure.
That's
And
right.
it would be silly to ignore it. And it's less about somebody needing to fit a certain shirt size or
Hmm.
have a certain aesthetic appearance, and it's more
Yes.
so about like helping people find ways to be the best leader that they can be.
Hmm.
And in other areas, like for me, my I don't think I'd have as good of mental health. I wouldn't have as good of patience if I didn't prioritize fitness in some way.
I would be a wreck. I have been a wreck. Yeah.
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 And it's just like it's so important that we are like forthcoming in the importance of that, where we do kind of have some conviction in what we say. Like I've even thought lately, I'm like,
Mhm.
I could take on a few more online and in-person clients, and I think the best way to do that would be to show my own consistency in public. Like just be like, hey, I'm gonna go to the gym on this day. I'm gonna get this many steps, and this is how I'm gonna get 200 grams of protein today. That would be the best way that I could get clients quicker because
Yeah.
people would see that I'm leading by example by doing what I say that you should do.
Right.
And if I was going to do the opposite, I wouldn't blame people for being like, oh, I'll kind of shop around, I'll look at other people. Even though
Right.
I would have the same intellect, I'd be providing the same product.
Yeah.
I respect them for making that distinction of one version of me versus the other. Um,
Yes.
but there's one more thing that you do very well that I've observed mostly through your social media posts that I think younger coaches need to hear, or coaches within 5 years of my age. And that is that you are out in public. You go and you talk to people and you network with people and you go to events
Hmm.
and you make really good connections with people. And that gets lost on today's like online industry because
Yes.
people think that they can build their business solely from their home. And I have a belief and an opinion that I think you should take a hybrid approach where you go to events, maybe not even fitness events, you meet
Yeah.
people, you introduce yourself to people, you carry business cards around, you go to things you've never gone to before, you help people out behind the scenes, you do all these things because that pays off. So what is your advice around that, or what have been the most pivotal things that you have done up to this point?
Oh, I'm so glad you made that point because I do see a lot of gym owners and trainers relying entirely on the computer. And we have to use the computer a lot, obviously, and I'm not afraid of that or advising anyone to not do it. But there is a reluctance to get out into the world, and talk to people. And this gets back to my training and passion as a reporter. I could and did every day for years and years walk up to complete strangers and ask them anything. And it could be about a lawsuit, it could be about criminal charges, it could be about a horrible fire that just killed three people, it could be anything, right? That was a skill that I acquired and used every day as in news. And I can't just sit here at my computer and do it. I have to talk to people. I have to see the thing. I have to smell the smells. I have to hear the music. I have to have that tactile interaction, and I have to encounter real people in their environment. It can't just all be on the screen for me. If others can do that, then that's great. I don't know. I don't know how you can do what I do strictly from a computer, but what I enjoy about that is that it makes my material better and richer, and it also is kind of secondarily a form of networking. Because if I see you doing something and I walk up and say, "Hi, I'm Jay Croft. I write about people over 50 in fitness. Can I ask you a few questions?" 99 times out of 100, you say, "Sure, what's up?" Once in a blue moon, someone says, "No, I don't want to talk to you." Yeah, that's fine. I don't care. I can handle that. Most of the time they talk to you, maybe you get a good story out of it, maybe you get a nice photo for Instagram out of it, but it's not that interesting enough to ask them 100 questions about. And then maybe it's just a good resource, that you can then say, "Oh, who was that woman I talked to at the gym she's a nurse in diabetes. I need to talk to someone who's an expert in diabetes. Let me find her contact information." Right? Or you talk to someone whose mother is beginning to develop signs of some chronic illness, and they want help in finding a healthcare professional or a fitness professional who might be able to help her. And maybe I know someone who I can pass that contact information along. That is how I see my role as a communicator, is as a conduit of information, as a connector of people. And I have to do that in person. It's really just the only way I know how. It's not because I think because I'm so cool and I'm so awesome and you should do what I do. I'll give you an example. I posted this today on Instagram. I wrote a story about menopause this week. I've written about menopause in the past. I'll write about menopause again, but this time it was an interview with a really interesting woman in Colorado who is a career nutritionist, and she has recently become a trainer as well, and she works with women going through menopause. And so we had a great interview, had a good time. I used a photograph of her to illustrate the story. Then I thought, well, if I'm going to do something about women in midlife and their hormones and how fitness, particularly strength training, is crucial for women around menopause, then I should do a little something on men and testosterone as well. So I wrote a little story and then I didn't have a photo for it. And I thought, well, I'll just have to think of something. What can I do? I don't know. I'll go to the gym, work out. I went to the gym, worked out, and literally, as I was walking out the door, I walked into the main area of the gym, and there's this guy about my age, about 60 years old. He's got a full beard, he's got hair all over him, he's got muscles all over him, big smile on his face, and he's standing in front of a ton of barbells. And he's got his arms up on the shelf like this, and he's looking right at me, exactly like he's waiting for me to come along and ask if I could take his picture.
Yeah.
So I did. It's a great shot. Went perfectly with what I was writing about. I put it on Instagram. That's just every day for me. I don't even question it. It's just my MO. And I think it's really, really important because technology is great, but nothing connects like two people looking each other in the eye. And nothing informs writing better than, like I said, all the senses being engaged and really being in someone's space and soaking them in a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree, and I'm a big technology guy, but I can see that the pendulum will swing the other way, where technology will become like mind numbing, where we'll almost like regress academically and
Mm,
socially,
yeah,
where all of a sudden it'll be a novelty to like go and meet people in real life because like they got
yeah,
those virtual reality glasses, they got all these things where you can be in like
yeah,
this little world in the computer. But talking to people in real life is going to be such a thing, and it's going to be more and more important for people in the fitness space to
yeah,
bring that up, to be like, hey, like if you want to make a viable career in this industry, start connecting with people again, start
yeah,
learning how to connect, start learning how to public speak, start learning how to start conversations with strangers, because everybody is in a body that needs to be healthy, that wants to be pain free, that wants to live longer to get more experiences. Like it's kind of like the pursuit of money. We also have that pursuit of happiness, which I think is superior to the pursuit of money, but sometimes
yeah,
people get it twisted. But it's just so important that people start to look at like the different case studies that are out there of the people who just naturally find it easy to go out and connect with people, that think about like, okay, I need a picture for this, and instead of making some weird like seven fingered AI picture, then
yeah,
then they just go out and they talk to a real life person and they ask them if they can take the picture. Like there's so many little nuances that are lost in today's society that I think people need to bring back. And I think any younger coaches, if they happen to tune into this episode, if I had any advice to impart, I would say go learn from people who are older than you, because like when somebody has more experience, they have more lessons. And just because we can get access to all these things on the internet doesn't mean it's the right advice. And it doesn't mean that it's experience based advice, because the internet will also hallucinate things for us. It'll have
yes,
misinformation. There's going to be a
yes,
lot of crazy things out there. So experience is still going to be a differentiating factor no matter how much technology evolves. And like again, I say I'm a big fan of technology. I use it regularly,
yeah.
but experience is going to be huge in our world. But now I'm going to ask you one final question, two final
Okay,
questions. So the second last question is going to be, we talked about your book early in the episode. I'm going to definitely include links, but I'm curious to know how would be the best way for people to purchase your book and support you.
Well, thank you very much. I suppose the best way right now would be to go to my website, which is primefitcontent.com. So it's prime like the prime of your life, primefitcontent.com. There's a link to the book, which will be the launch date is July 31st. I don't know if you're going to publish this before then. If someone hears this before then, I have a link where you can get on the wait list, and then I will notify you, remind you when the book is, when you can buy the book and get it. So, and if you're listening to this after July 31st, just go to amazon.com and get it there. Or please check out my website, primefitcontent.com, and I'd love to have you check out my podcast, which is Optimal Aging. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts, and there's a video version on YouTube. And it's a little more broad than just go to the gym. It's more about healthier. It's about more to do with healthy aging than just go to the gym. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I have a final question, and this is kind of a callback to the questions I would ask when I first started my podcast. I started a
Okay.
podcast and it was under the name The Lifestyle Chase back in 2018. And then after the pandemic, I shifted it to be called Chasing Common Ground
Right.
because I found I needed something that helped people understand the purpose, that I'd sometimes interview people outside of the fitness industry, that I'd sometimes interview people that like had a similar path to mine, sometimes a different path to mine, and I wanted to teach people how to learn from others, and I wanted to teach people how to foster stronger connections, but in a passive way where it was kind of like sneaky, like breadcrumbing all the little life lessons through the
Yeah.
conversations with other people. Now, the question is, if you were to give a person one piece of advice on how to live your life authentically to the fullest, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, hmm. I think it would be slow down and do the work. Because when I was young, I wanted everything right away. I think that's characteristic of youth, perhaps. And it's really only in doing basic things over and over and over again that I got any good at anything and that I've built anything. And I think that that's true in writing and in fitness and in business. Think about, if you do a simple barbell curl, 3 times a week, your biceps will grow, right?
Yeah,
Pretty sure bet that that will happen. And it's really the same with anything else. If you just will put in the work and have realistic expectations and take pleasure in the doing, then the results will come.
I think that's super valuable advice. And on that note, I'd like to thank you, Jay, for joining me on the show and for being such a great guest today.
Oh, golly, thank you, Chris. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.